It's December 15th, 2017, and you're listening to the IoT Weekly Podcast. Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the IoT Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Gearforge Software. My name is Matthew, and I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Cliff. How you doing today, Cliff?
I am doing phenomenal. How about yourself, Matthew?
I'm doing great. We are in the clutches of winter now here in Minnesota. I look out the window and I see the white stuff on the ground.
And I always say it looks just gorgeous, and then you start driving in it, and you're like, oh.
And it turns brown.
It turns brown. You're like, why am I here again? And not in like Tahiti.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Tahiti sounds like a good idea right now. But here we are in the frozen north, and I guess, it's a good day to be alive anyway. So, Cliff, what have you been up to?
Well, Matthew, as you know, there's a holiday coming up here. So
what?
Yep. So
another one
right around the corner.
Oh.
Yeah. So this last weekend, it was, as you can imagine, there wasn't a lot of technology going on at the house. It was more about making cookies, and got some of those handed out to the neighbors. And then we've got another trip coming here this next weekend. We're heading to Georgia, so it's really been just how do we clean the house, get everything sorted out so we can get ready to go to the next trip here with the holidays right around the corner.
Yeah, sounds busy times. Nothing wrong with Christmas cookies, that's for sure.
Oh, I do love Christmas cookies. How about yourself? What have you been up to, Matthew?
So, nothing quite as tasty, but last weekend I spent some time playing with Linux all over the place, but on Windows. Huh. Yeah, so, as I've mentioned before, and well, I'm kind of a Linux enthusiast. Obviously, we use it every day at work for, all of our servers and everything like that. But at home, for years, I have really enjoyed running Linux and kind of playing around with it. The fact that it's an open platform makes it a lot of fun. What I think is interesting, so when Microsoft has been doing a lot to bring Linux to the Windows platform in some really interesting ways, and their Windows subsystem for Linux is something I've been following for quite a while. So I spent some time playing around with that last weekend. This fall creators update to Windows 10 brought some new Linux distributions that you can install and run in the Windows subsystem for Linux on Windows, and a bunch of enhancements as well. So kind of testing that out to see, as it gets better and better, I think Windows becomes a much more palatable development environment for somebody like me. So
it's so funny. If you would ask me 7 years ago, Matthew, about Linux on Windows, I'm like, what are you talking about? That's just crazy talk.
Isn't it crazy?
Yes.
And, do you remember the famous quote from Steve Ballmer that Linux is like a cancer? He got it was sort of back when Microsoft was the evil empire, and now Microsoft has embraced the open source world. They're the #1 contributor on GitHub, and they've got Linux running, natively. Well, we should be clear. It's actually the user space stuff. It's not actually a Linux kernel, but it's using this subsystem that has been, I guess it's been a part of Windows going way back, but now they've leveraged it to build this system where you can basically run native Linux applications right on Windows, and it's fantastic. And so in this latest update, you can actually you install Linux subsystem stuff from the Windows Store, and you can get Ubuntu, and I think Fedora is there now, and OpenSUSE, and
that's just crazy.
It is crazy, and I never thought I would see this world.
So I never thought I would see something like this, ever.
But what's exciting is for a geek like me who does web development for a living, right? Like I need to build stuff that runs on Linux servers, and suddenly for years Windows was not a practical platform. I use Mac for work.
Yep.
and I use Linux for home. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden I've got this other option. I can, run Linux directly on Windows, and it's pretty cool.
It's so much better. Yeah, I switched a long time ago to Mac just because you're fighting essentially. It just didn't work. So you end up, it was easier just to do a Mac and then do a second boot to Windows on the Mac.
Yeah, and I had the same thing. You remember when I was doing Android development at our previous company, I basically begged for a Mac because when I got there, I was set up with a Lenovo running Windows 7, and doing Android development on Windows was a total pain in the butt. I had to install drivers for every phone to get it to use ADB. And with Mac, I could just plug it in. And the same thing with Linux, right? So we've come a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree at all.
So, Cliff, do we have any feedback this week?
We did not get any feedback this week. I was really hoping to get some additional feedback. I loved Logan last week preparing some feedback and sending it over to us, and much appreciated. I know folks are listening. I can see the numbers on the podcast are increasing, so I know you're listening. So we'd love to get feedback. You can shoot us a message at podcast@gearforgesoftware.com. Again, that's podcast@gearforgesoftware.com.
You don't even need to have anything important to say. If you just want to drop a line and say hi, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
Let us know what do you want to hear us talk about on future episodes. Give us any feedback. We're happy to hear the things that you like and maybe the things that you don't like. So just get in touch and let us know.
Most definitely. All
right. So, Cliff, is there anything exciting that might be coming up in future episodes?
Oh my gosh, Matthew. I'm telling you, you want excitement?
I do.
So,
always.
So this is super exciting. I love this. So we've talked now, I don't know, almost seems like every episode we're talking about these darn Amazon IoT buttons. Would you agree?
Those buttons, I tell you.
Yes, those darn buttons. However, fun as it may be, we now have 7 Amazon IoT buttons that were donated to us by Amazon. We're going to do some giveaways starting next week. So in the subsequent 7 weeks, we are going to give away 1 button each week.
That is so exciting.
I know. I can't wait. And so I've got the button sitting right here next to me. They're in the boxes. They haven't been opened. They're ready to be provisioned and ready to do some fun stuff. So any of you that have been wanting an excuse to play with one of these buttons, just for the fun of it, here's your perfect opportunity to jump right in. So we don't have the details yet with regards to how we're going to sort through the giveaway. You listen in episode 4, so next week, we'll have all of the details of how to actually partake in this giveaway for these buttons.
That is super exciting.
Yep.
And I'm thrilled that we have something to give away here so early in our podcast's history. So
I know. I'm just loving this, and I cannot wait to see what other folks can do with these things.
That is very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are lots of great ideas out there in the community about what to do, what are the opportunities with IoT. And if you had one of those ideas, where would you turn?
Well, that's a great question, Matthew. So if I had an idea, something like what you're describing, or just, oh my gosh, I think this would be the coolest thing to do, I'd probably start looking around to find a geek to help me out with that.
You know what? I think that is exactly what I would do as well. You need to find somebody who knows something about connecting things to the cloud.
Yep.
And Gearforge Software is founded to focus on and develop Internet of Things technology and create custom IoT solutions. Gearforge Software happens to be the sponsor of this podcast. They actually pay us to record it, which is very generous. And there are just so many things you have to consider when you're trying to develop a new idea. There's the hardware, there's the software, there's connecting all of that stuff to the cloud, and then hackers are going to want to get into your business and tear into your data and sell it on, on the black market, and you don't want that to happen. So what you need is some techie advisors. You need them to help you figure out how to go from idea to implementation, and maybe you've got some of this sorted out already and you just need somebody to help you connect it up to the cloud. That's where Gearforge Software can help. So learn more at gearforgesoftware.com. And thank you for sponsoring the show.
Yes, and I think Gearforge, you should bring more donuts. I think you're lacking.
I 100% agree. There are not enough free donuts in my life.
I would agree with that.
Awesome. So we've got some exciting stuff up today in our main segment. What we usually do is a review of the news, and I think we've got some really interesting stories this week.
Yeah, I think some big stuff came out and some surprises too. So what do you want? What's the first one we've got, Matthew?
Well, it sounds like there was some kind of problem with HomeKit, and that is Apple's what would you call that? Home automation SDK.
Yep.
So
kind of like their smart home solution.
Yeah, smart home is a good way to put it. So what's going on there?
So essentially, they had to push out a fix that allowed essentially a remote unlocking of users' doors. So it's a pretty big scenario. So Apple has been forced to fix a security hole within its HomeKit smart home system that essentially could have allowed hackers to unlock a user's smart locks or other devices.
Whoa!
So, I don't know about you, but I've got a smart lock on our house. Right in front.
I remember that. Yeah, we don't. We have dumb locks.
We've got kids, and they're popping by, and we had the house remodeled, so we needed a way to be able to leverage different key codes and everything else without handing out these keys. And I love our smart lock.
Mm-hmm. So is this something you can, is this something you can unlock with your phone or that kind of thing? Or is it more of a touchpad kind of arrangement?
Ours is a touchpad. We decided not to get the one with the phone. We looked at that also. Mm-hmm. We just decided to go. Of course, I was concerned about security. Right. And with this bug, it just reaffirms that's still a scenario we've got to deal with.
Well, yeah, anytime you're dealing with software of any kind, bugs happen, right? It is just reality.
Yep.
It is really interesting. So if you think about devices in general, let's talk about medical devices. Bugs happen in medical devices too, but because of the nature of the industry, that software tends to be the most heavily tested, right? Things like that, if you're doing controller code for a power plant, that's probably really heavily tested.
I'm guessing probably NASA has a little bit of testing too.
Yeah, totally. Although, you know what? I heard recently that NASA released the source code for, I think it was the Apollo guidance code.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all assembly language and stuff like that, but it's apparently up on GitHub. I haven't gone to take a look at it, but it's got all the comments in there. And so what I heard was that in the comments, it actually has places that are like, God, I hope this works, and things like that. So it's just code, right?
Yes. And back to your thoughts with regards to devices. It's one thing if you can make a server-side fix from a coding standpoint, yep. But if it's out in the wild, trying to get that back and trying to convince a user to update the software, good luck. In many cases, you're going to have a subset of those individuals that will never upgrade.
Well, and this is the challenge with everything IoT, right? It's running some form of software on the device. And what do now, what's the upgrade path look like,
Yep. Well, the interesting thing for the Apple scenario, they ended up saying that a temporary fix was made server-side, and essentially users didn't have to do anything for it to take an effect. However, with that, it ended up breaking some functionality of the system.
Yep. Yeah, that totally makes sense. They're going to have to patch the device.
Yep.
I don't honestly know a whole lot about their these locks or
Uh,
how that is all configured, but it seems like this is the sort of thing we will see in the IoT space. Is just like there are security vulnerabilities that are discovered on servers after having run that way for years, right? This is going to happen with IoT devices too. And it's going to be interesting to see how that gets patched. Like what do you have to do to your smart lock? Do you have to send it back to the manufacturer? Like
because are you going to hook up are you going to expect the user to walk over to it and plug in a USB or something like that to the darn thing, or a micro USB?
You've got to flash the firmware.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine trying to walk a user through that.
Yeah, that does not sound. But it's interesting because if it's your even your coffee maker, maybe that's potentially a problem, right? But if it's your coffee maker, maybe you're less concerned.
Yeah,
but if it's your
can't
front
get up
door,
and make my coffee. Well, that would actually be really bad at my house. But in other scenarios, if someone is watching your home and it's an opportunity because they can see the type of device, essentially just walk by with be like, oh, that's transmitting. That's a smart device. I know it's got XYZ in it, and we can break into that.
But here's the flip side. Is like, think about traditional locks. Most traditional locks really aren't that hard. If you wanted to get into a place, right? There's not a lot stopping you, right? It's not because it's Fort Knox, that's for sure, right?
Yeah.
So is this really, this is not great, but is it really terrible? Maybe it's not, right? And I wonder if some of the other aspects of the sort of IoT home automation, the fact that even monitoring, like you can easily set up motion sensors now, and just, you don't even have to go through a security company anymore, right? You can do that. Just connect it to your local network, and it can notify you when it senses something. And it's like, this is all technology that's available now and relatively cheap. And I wonder if overall IoT is actually going to make us safer, even though it also comes with the hazard of sometimes there will be bugs, and this is an embarrassing one, right? But yes, my traditional key lock is not going to somehow open itself because of a flaw in programming, but it also doesn't make me that much safer, does it?
I think, Matthew, all it's going to come down to is really perception around this.
Right.
It really is, I think, perception based off of how you feel from a security standpoint, right? It's like, all right, I know my old deadbolt and regular lock. I don't have any of those concerns versus I upgrade to this. It has the potential to unlock itself. So I think that's probably more so from a perception standpoint. It's probably much more emotional based than logic based when it comes to security, Matthew.
Yeah. Do you feel safer? Basically.
That's it. Do you feel safer with this device?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're absolutely 100% right there.
So it's because I can talk all day long logically about why, just like you said, now you've got video and you've got essentially detection and all these other things, and you'd know immediately should someone walk into the house. But at the same time, having all of those things now makes it much more top of mind. So you might be more anxious than you were before.
Absolutely. Yes, by just simply monitoring it, you've sort of changed the way you think about it, right? It's
entirely.
Like,
yep.
Man,
your mental model is so different at that point.
I didn't want to know that.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, the house is open again, or the door has not been shut this entire 20 minutes. My darn kid.
It's funny because I have one of those garage doors with the keypad.
Yeah.
You got to think this thing is not very secure, right? It's really not, but I don't worry about it. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. You're probably right. It's probably almost all emotion at that point.
Yeah. But however, going back to your other example with regards to medical devices, that's a different story when it could potentially, I think we'd mentioned the for the heart, right?
Yeah, the one that could give you a heart attack. It was
Yeah,
hacked
that's a
and
totally different story than, all right, my lock on the door.
well, it is. Yeah, I agree. I think in general, just having intelligent devices, things that it's more than just it does this one thing and that's it, but it's been programmed in some way. The more complexity that gets added there, the more that this has to connect to other things, the more opportunity there is for things to go wrong. And
Yep.
frankly, I mean, I always like the let's keep it simple, right? When it's really critical. So I'm
Yes.
not so sure that I would feel safe with that medical device, right? But my coffee maker, maybe I don't care as much,
Sure.
like I want convenience there. I don't,
I do. I
yeah,
want my coffee ready for me at the morning, and there we go.
I totally agree.
So,
Yeah, plus I would kind of like something, I'd like something to be able to feed my dogs. That
oh
might be
my
nice.
gosh.
Basically, I want Rosie from the Jetsons, I think.
I would be really worried the dogs that I got a pretty smart dog, and he would probably figure out a way to get a third or fourth
To trick it.
meal.
Yeah.
Oh, entirely. Once he's pretty sharp, and I'd be shocked if he didn't figure out eventually how to get a third or fourth meal out of that darn thing.
Yeah, I agree.
So what
Well,
else do we have here?
so it in a news report that came out recently, it sounds like IDC, which is a research firm, has predicted that manufacturing specifically is going to spend more in IoT in 2018, which I don't think that's a big surprise, is it?
I don't think so. I think most folks have been looking at this, and we've heard a lot of prototype going on. What I thought was interesting in the article was that Jim Gillespie, he's the CEO of Pittsburgh-based Gray Matter, had mentioned 2017 was about developing a vision, but 2018 will be about execution for industrial IoT.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting because we've read a lot here recently about prototyping and things like that. However, the execution side is where it seems like a lot of folks are still on the fence. So I'm not entirely shocked at all that manufacturing or industrial is going to be leading the cause when it comes to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is more or less what we had predicted.
Yep.
And it's making the leap. Companies are trying to figure out what are they doing in this space, and now it seems it's moving from just trying to figure out a strategy to actually taking some action.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I've read, everything I've heard is that this is just everybody predicts this segment is going to continue to grow and grow, and I think it makes so much sense. As it really depends on, the hardware has got to get cheap enough, right?
Well, and I think for the manufacturing side, they've already got sensors. They've already got a ton of data
Sure.
that's being collected on a daily basis in a factory. So just actually taking that data and turning it into something that's meaningful isn't that far of a leap at this point. I mean, the systems are now in place to be able to do that. So I mean, I think that's the key part is for industrial, they've got a lot of measurements already.
Well, and that makes sense. I mean, when you're talking about like a $1 million+ machine, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And for example, sensors, I mean, this is pennies for them, to deal with sort of adding IoT to $1 million device, right? I think in manufacturing that makes so much sense. In things like we had the article last week about the shipping the milk,
Yes.
right, and monitoring. So in cases like that, I mean, the cost of those sensors is a deterrent, right?
Yes.
You have to find a way to, because how do you monitor? How many shipments do you have? How many sensors do you need? All of that becomes a factor. But with manufacturing, I think it's completely different.
I would totally agree.
So
Your ecosystem is much tighter in many cases also.
yeah, well, and cost is less of a factor. It's like,
Yes.
well, yeah, we spent $10 million on this press. Absolutely, we're going to spend $10,000 making sure that we have lots of data
Yep.
about that That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll look forward to kind of watching that develop over the course of 2018.
Yep, we'll definitely see if that's actually where the spend actually happens, or if it's in other areas or other channels. So I'm really curious.
Yeah, and this is all moving so fast. I think the end of 2018 might look really different from the beginning.
Oh, regardless, I'm going to be so excited about kind of where things end up at and the standards that get approved and direction and all types of different areas.
Me too. So this next story, I'm actually surprised that something like this hasn't come up more, or it doesn't come up more often. But it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like there is a Chinese company that has created a Raspberry Pi clone called the Libre Renegade. So what is this all about, Cliff?
So my understanding is that a Shenzhen-based firm is touting a new Raspberry Pi Model B clone that costs $35 and offers better specs than the current developer board for Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and it sounds like, from what I can see, it looks like this is Indiegogo, so it's maybe not available for general purchase yet.
I think it's coming.
Yeah, it's probably coming. So better specs. Let me read them here quickly. 4 gigabytes of RAM, USB 3, gigabit Ethernet, a Rock chip RK3328 quad-core Cortex-A53 processor, an ARM Mali 450 MP2 GPU, 2 USB 2 Type A ports, 1 USB 3 Type A port. I mean, that's a decent upgrade from the
Mm-hmm.
standard Raspberry Pi, still priced at $35.
That's not bad at all.
I'm just surprised that there aren't more. I mean, Raspberry Pi has been such a big deal, and there are certainly other boards out there that are competitive with it. But I'm surprised that there aren't lots more.
I really am surprised that we're not seeing more. I think this is just the first case. You're going to see a lot more, I think, in the future here.
Yeah, and I love the Raspberry Pi 3.
Yep.
It is. I have felt like if you could get that, but just maybe a little bit of an upgrade, right?
Sure.
It is just like, then it is just on the verge of being a replacement for everyday computing needs.
I am pretty close to ready to replace my mother-in-law's computer with a Raspberry Pi 3.
I know, right? And it's
so
it's
close,
just,
I can tell you that right now.
it's just right on the verge of where I would consider that kind of thing.
Yep.
It's just a little bit. I find, specifically if the web browsing were a little smoother.
Yeah, it's a little slow. It's a little clunky. I agree with you on that. Just a little bit better specs, and I think I would be, if it was a little bit better, I'd be perfectly happy handing this over to my kids to play with.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, as a small device for running other kinds of workloads, it's great. So for example, you want to spin up a little home server or something like that. I mean, the specs for that are perfect. In fact, it's not that different from the smallest size virtual servers that we run, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's great for that. I think it's just interesting, a slight bump up, and I think it would be maybe have even more uses. So I'll be curious to follow this. It says it comes with Android, so not shipping Linux by default, shipping Android.
Yeah, that's kind of odd.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know how I feel about that, but I do know that there's a lot of movement right now, specifically related to ARM architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And so Red Hat recently came out saying that they would be supporting ARM architecture. And this is what's interesting, is there's a bunch of work being done to make this, which has traditionally been used for these mobile devices, and then things like low power, like Raspberry Pis. There's a big push toward using ARM for servers. So what we're talking about is like these huge multi-core setups on servers, and because ARM is low, tends to be lower power, Um, the possibility there is you could run an aggressive server workload, but on a fraction of the power. Which, if you think about you're running a server farm, that could be a huge deal. So I'm curious to see how that evolves. As we move forward, I think this is the traditional place where you expect to see an ARM processor, but maybe we'll see some changes there in the future, right? Where it moves sort of past the mobile market and into servers.
Yeah, I think you're going to see this. It's going to continue to progress.
So, Cliff, what is the Things Network?
So this is an interesting story. So this is a article that came out, and the Things Network has essentially brought its products to market for easy development of low-power, long-range IoT networks. So what does that mean? Well, they've launched the Things Gateway, the Things Node, and the Things Uno, and anyone can essentially get started with the Internet of Things using one of the Simtex LoRa devices. And we talked about Simtech in a previous podcast about the small nano size items and leveraging their LoRa wireless radio frequency technology. So the Things Network promises that anyone can set up a local network in 5 minutes, build an Internet of Things prototype in essentially 60 minutes, and they can do an entire proof of concept in one day. So it's essentially building out your own LoRa WAN network is how this works.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this is cool.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. The Things Network is actually a collaborative Internet of Things data network started in Amsterdam, and they cover the city with an open LoRa WAN network.
Wow.
Yep. So it's gaining popularity, and currently there's over 28,000 users that's part of this global community spread across 550 cities around the world.
Well, this is great. I see, it's nice that they've got some really accessible, videos here for getting started. This looks like a terrific resource.
I think this is a great scenario if you're really trying to just wanting to, again, we talk about connectivity so much because I think that is going to be the biggest challenge when it comes to pushing data, getting it to the cloud, and then from the cloud, where do you get it to your app or wherever that's stored? And this is just another scenario that allows you to do that.
And it sounds like this is, people are trying to figure this out, right?
Yep.
It's what is going to emerge as the standard over the next few years of how you get this data from one place to another. And you're right. It might be very different from what we have traditionally expected.
Yes. So
well, this is great.
Took a look at their little development kit that they've got here. I definitely find it pretty interesting. I'm on the fence as whether I want to buy this one or not. If they'd like to shoot us one over to play with, I'd be happy to play with it.
Yeah. But how much does it cost? Does it have a price listed?
Yeah. So 1 second. Where's the price at here? So I want to say when I was looking at it, it was priced in euros. That is the problem.
Yeah, I see the Amsterdam here.
Yep, and I think it was like I want to say it was like 290 euros or something of that sort. So I'll have to get back to you on the price.
Yeah, we can put it in the show notes. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I don't see it either.
It's not $5. I can tell you that. I remember it was more than that. So
there's a little bit of an upfront.
Yes.
Well,
and what I've noticed for a lot of these developer kits that folks are selling, that's not uncommon to be $100 to $1,100. So I've seen it priced all the way across the board.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Well, that's an exciting find. I'll spend some more time taking a look at that.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that'll be an interesting scenario to see if this moves out of the essentially the EU. And it looks like map-wise, there are some spots here in the United States that have gotten some of these networks, from what I can see, or gateways, I guess you'd say. So folks are opening up. I should say some folks are actually opening up gateways that are just open and anybody can use.
No kidding.
So it allows you to connect up to a gateway that someone else has already created and be able to leverage that or create your own. Because you got to imagine for the low RA, you can actually get, say, 6 kilometer distance, or and I think it can even up to almost 10 kilometers if you have pure line of sight from a distance standpoint to detect these nodes.
It's interesting. Is this there's been a bunch of chatter about the possibility of sort of a more decentralized internet, right? More peer-to-peer. I wonder if this is a technology that could be leveraged for something like that. Might be worth a little bit of research time.
And I've seen a few suggestions specifically around that, Matthew, already in some of the forums I've been reading.
It was the first thing that popped into my head. I know the concerns over sort of losing control of the internet, right?
Yep.
And the idea that it needs to be fundamentally free to work. By free, I mean open.
Correct.
Not that it costs nothing. So yeah, that's very interesting. I'll have to take a look.
And a lot of these, they're looking at almost like a machine-to-machine type talking with a gateway. So I thought that was really interesting about that. Just like you said, it's more of a network-based scenario that's more localized than kind of sending everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a good find.
Yeah, it's funny because you look at the link in this thing that says, "Hey, buy him here," and there's not a single one on that page. So they may want to update their link as far as how to buy these things.
Yeah, maybe so. Certainly, if you are a part of the Things Network or associated with them, and you'd like to reach out and give us some feedback, we'd love to hear from you at podcast@gearforgesoftware.com. Cliff, you know what we didn't talk about this week?
What's that?
We didn't talk about Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Oh gosh, yeah.
Holy buckets! I know it's not IoT related, but man, my brain is just spinning. Like that's another thing that I would not have seen coming.
No. Did you mortgage your house to go buy some?
I did not.
I've heard people doing that.
I have too. I feel like that is a bad choice.
I can't imagine doing that. My sister wants to invest in Bitcoin. I was like, no, go ahead. I don't know, again, just like anybody else, when's this thing gonna stop, or is it gonna keep on going?
Yeah, it's very I don't know, but there's a ceiling to everything. So
there typically is. I always worry when you hear people mortgaging houses and things like that. The first thing that pops in my head is bubble. And it's like, how do you know to get out at the right point?
You don't, and that's what makes it speculative.
Yep.
So if you're an investor but not a gambler, you're probably not mortgaging your house to buy Bitcoin.
Exactly. It's a piece of your portfolio.
What is pretty interesting is, so I think blockchain in general and some of the fundamental concepts behind Bitcoin and sort of what that means for the open, open ledgers, basically, right?
Mm-hmm. Sort
of a different way of thinking about currency, and not just currency, but other kinds of anything that's transactional, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's a reason why cryptocurrency and kind of gets bundled together with IoT. I think there are 3 emergent industries right now. It is IoT, it is cryptocurrency, essentially blockchain, maybe not cryptocurrency, but maybe blockchain, and AI. Yeah. And those 3 seem to get, everywhere I look, they seem to get bundled together.
Yeah, typical tracks. That's where because remember the first time we talked about it, I was like, why is blockchain with AI and IoT?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see that pairing constantly in articles and on in some of these news releases of a company purchasing another company, that's some of the things that they sort of specify. And I don't know if it's because these are all emergent right now, or if because they play together so nicely, right?
Sure.
I'm not sure yet, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I had heard, I don't know if you looked, so I did take a look at what it would take to build a rig to actually mine, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently there's a shortage on GPUs right now due to the amount of rigs that people are actually building.
Yeah, and one of the things that, the initial appeal of Bitcoin was that, it was going to be much more efficient than traditional currencies, right? The reality is it's super inefficient. It takes an enormous amount of power
Yes.
actually to run these ledgers. And so it's actually having the opposite effect. And that is potentially an issue for scaling this whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now it seems like that's not going to work.
No, we're already starting to run into a limit about the amount that can be farmed and everything else. So it's right now, I think you're right with the amount of money just flowing into it. It's going to increase in value, but at a certain point, it's going to stop.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how this evolves. One thing that seems certain is, blockchain is definitely going to change lots of industries, and it seems like cryptocurrency as a concept, I don't know about Bitcoin specifically, but cryptocurrency as a concept is with us to stay. And I think similar to open source, it's it's going to have this sort of ripple effect through a lot of industries. I think we're really early days, and it's going to look really different in 20 years.
100%. It's just about right now figuring out how does this fit into the current world.
Totally. Well, and for me, it doesn't at the
Neither.
moment.
I'm not buying any pizza with Bitcoin. I can tell you that right now.
No. If I wish I had, picked up some Bitcoin when it was $1.
Oh gosh.
But I didn't think about that at the time.
I didn't either. Trust me.
Oh well.
I can think of a ton of stock I would have liked to bought a long time ago too, but I didn't.
Yeah, I think about that too. Oh man, like Amazon.
Yes.
Oh, I remember. Oh well, I didn't buy it. Moving on. So that just about wraps things up for this week's episode, Cliff. Do you have anything fun planned for the weekend? I think you were talking about something.
Yeah, so I do have a trip to Georgia. We're flying out and going down there. My birthday is this weekend, so I'll be spending the weekend in Georgia, and that should be really fun. And then coming back on next Monday, and there is a movie I plan on seeing, and I think you might be seeing that too this weekend. Is that right?
There is a movie coming out, and I will be seeing it this weekend. What movie could you possibly be talking about?
Well, it's not Ready Player One, even though that's one I can't wait to see.
Yes.
The trailer came out for that, and it looks pretty amazing.
I haven't seen the trailer. I know you're jazzed about the book, though.
I know. Actually, it's Star Wars, of course. I am super jazzed about this. I can't wait for it to come out. I've stayed away from all reviews and anything else because I don't want any spoilers. We've got tickets for 9:30 on Thursday night to go see Star Wars.
Fun. Yes, I can't wait. I'm very excited. My enthusiasm for Star Wars has been completely renewed with these new movies. And as you know, Rogue One I just loved it. So, so I'm very excited. We've rewatched episode 7.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we watched it a few weekends ago. And actually, Callum and I, my son and I we watched Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi as well recently. So, I feel like we've kind of refreshed some of the storyline there. And of course, I've been playing Battlefront 2, Cliff. So I'm ready. I'm in Star Wars. Like I'm in the universe. I'm in the galaxy.
So ready. We watched episodes 1, 2, and 3 just to break it up a little bit.
Ooh, yeah.
This last week, and usually we'll just pop on a short snippet of a Star Wars just for the fun of it, not even watch the whole movie.
Yep. That sounds about right. Callum puts it on as background music. So.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Anything else planned for the weekend, Matthew, for you?
Well, we've got tickets to go see. This is kind of cool. It's basically a symphony orchestra playing the soundtrack to Harry Potter, but while the movie plays. So instead of having the score track on the movie, that's gone. But then the symphony is going to replace it with the actual music. So I am really excited to see that. I think that should be fun.
Which one are you going to be seeing? Is this the first one then?
I think it's the first one, yeah. I think it's the original Harry Potter movie.
So do you get popcorn, or is it more symphony-like and you have wine?
My hunch is it's a lot more symphony-like.
Okay.
It's the Minnesota Symphony Orchestra. So I assume it's a little bit more, maybe not formal, but maybe not popcorn. I don't know.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Because it's like, well, it sounds good with some popcorn and a large soda.
It does, doesn't it? I will tell you how it goes, because maybe that's just exactly what's going to happen.
I think it would be a ton of fun. I just can't even imagine like the musical. I mean, you're literally going to be able to feel that.
Yeah, it should be really fun. I can't imagine trying to coordinate that.
No, I wonder how long they practice for this.
I bet it was a while. Like that takes some work.
At a certain point, you're like, I never want to hear Harry Potter again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or they can quote the entire movie.
What a cool thing, though.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be a lot of fun. You have to tell us how that goes.
I totally will. So that brings us to the end of episode 3.
Yes, episode 3.
3, 4, 3. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll join us again for next week's show. Until then, so long and be well. Cliff, farewell.
Take care, Matthew.